Did you yell anything to the officer, or did the officer yell anything to you?
I said, you shot the wrong person.
Words there from the woman who told police she wanted to die in this high-profile officer-involved shooting from November. The officer shot and killed the person who actually had called 911 for help. He's now on leave pending an investigation which will get forwarded to the district attorney. And then on New Year's Day, an Army soldier set off this car bomb outside the Trump Hotel, killing himself. He left behind notes about military programs and the government. So those events leading us to ask where these investigations stand and what they say about our overall safety. It shows how vulnerable we really are, right? Someone can buy a bunch of fuel, rent a car, use their own car, buy a bunch of fireworks, and do that. There was no, no one was on his tail, even though he thought they were, but there was no warning. It happened. And my point being, it could very much happen again and be much worse.
Yeah.
So what did you learn from that, and how are you using what happened to have some sort of preventative measure?
Yeah, so great question. Lots to learn from it. Obviously, we'll do what we always do in these circumstances. We'll have a complete after-action report. We'll publish that report. We will go across the country and teach it to major cities and major counties and IACP and all of the organizations that want to learn specifically what happened and how do you go back. The most important thing when an event does happen is go back in and figure out, was there anywhere in that process that you could have intervened? You know, when I looked at the documents that I looked at, and I saw, this is an individual that we would have at any other time been calling a great American hero, a person who served multiple tours overseas, 5 times, several Bronze Stars, who clearly decompensated at some point and had significant mental health challenges, and then ultimately combined that with some substance challenge. And, when I look at what that looks like, we have a mental health crisis in our country. We know that. We have an addiction crisis in our country, which is also going back to the point of why I'm trying to take care of my cops the way, because we've ignored it for far too long. We've ignored it as a country. We've ignored it as a profession. And I really believe that we've got to continue to focus on all of those things, because just one individual that would have made a call, one individual that has seen the behaviors, we might have been able to stop what it is that he found himself doing on that fateful morning.
Does it worry you, though, when you're, I was outside the Trump Hotel a couple of those nights, and that hotel is right on the road. Some of these properties, you can do damage really quickly, and there's in public safety, there's often a reaction, not prevention. A car goes up on the sidewalk, we have the poles. A person does this, we do this. Do you think there needs to be a conversation of, well, maybe these buildings need to be designed differently, or maybe we need to advise who gets, do we need security in front of these properties? I mean, are those conversations in the future?
I wouldn't say they're in the future. We've been having them. We've been having them for a number of years. There's this sort of intersection between hospitality and security that's always been a tenuous relationship at best. You're right. I mean, it's a huge vulnerability for just about every property. Pulling in the porte-cochere and so we've done trunk checks before when people have come onto properties. We've done lots of different things, and so I think that not only do we meet with the corporate security groups, the CEOs, but also the security directors and three separate different groups, but that's all conversations that are ongoing. And again, another piece of that is how could you have technology help out with that? That's lots of things that we've seen over the years.
In November, an officer was responding to a 911 call about a home invasion, and we know now that he ended up killing the 911 caller, not the intruder. I assume you've seen that video. When you were briefed on that and you saw that video, what was your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway was that's not the call that you want to get when you're the head of the law enforcement agency where it happened at. Absolutely. I knew that when it had been described to me as to what happened, that we were going to have some challenges with this particular case. I've watched that video literally dozens of times. I still can't tell who was actually holding the knife when the officer confronted the 2 individuals. And so while I understand everybody wants answers right now, the other part of that is that The process is in place for a reason, and you'll get your answers. But we're going to do it by the book, and we're not going to go outside of the process, because anytime you go outside of the process, things happen, and we're going to follow it.
Did it matter that that same officer had interacted with those people and had been there the day before? And not just, I thought when I heard that, oh, maybe he was sitting in the car, because, a lot of people respond to different things. But in the house talking 20, 30 minutes, did that change your viewpoint on this?
Well, I was surprised by that. And certainly when you're at a call the day before, you would expect that the officer recognizes him. What I'd say to you about that is I've responded on thousands of calls over my career, and you get a 911 call. More often than not, the 911 call doesn't have all the adequate information that you need. And so all of those things are all part of what we are continuing to investigate. But I did want to make a point to you and the community here is that, you know where you got that information from? Us. Find a police department in the country that 72 hours after an officer-involved shooting is going to release all of that stuff. And I knew when we were going to release it, it was going to cause an outcry in the community. But I'm not going to hide because the video doesn't look good. I'm not going to hide because it doesn't shine us in the greatest light. I've committed to be transparent about this stuff, and we're going to do it. And look, I knew as I was putting it out that day that it was going to cause problems. And I'm not going to shy away from those problems, because I have 6,200 people on this organization, and we make mistakes. But we also try to learn from those mistakes.
Next, one final question about safety in the community.